Today we're going to dive into a sci-fi pilot called EIGENSTATE, and it goes after one of the absolute biggest questions you can possibly ask. What is consciousness? But here's the thing. It comes at this ancient mystery from a really fascinating and frankly a deeply unsettling new angle.
This line right here, from the lead scientist Jan Duncan, just perfectly sums up the team's massive frustration. It's a huge admission of failure, right? For years they've been running tests, gathering all this data, only to finally realize they've been fundamentally misunderstanding the very problem they're trying to solve.
And this is the subject of their obsession. Aeon, a super sophisticated, autonomous, and completely silent robot. It's a total marvel of engineering, but the quest to figure out if it actually has a mind is forcing its creators to throw out all their old assumptions and face a radical, new vision of reality itself.
So this brings us to Jan's crisis of faith. I mean, after decades of research just following the same old path, she hits a wall. And she realizes they haven't just failed to find an answer, they've been asking a completely flawed question from the very beginning.
This is the question that's been driving them nuts, the one scribbled on all their whiteboards. But just look at the assumption that's baked right into it. The question, what is it like to be Aeon, already presumes there is a like, that there's some kind of subjective reality inside that machine. They've been trying to describe an experience without ever proving one even exists.
So they pivot hard. They start digging into these theories that used to be way out on the fringes of science, ideas that suggest consciousness isn't something that brains make, but maybe something the universe fundamentally is.
Okay, so this slide breaks down the two competing ideas perfectly. You've got the standard model, which says consciousness is emergent. You get enough neurons firing together in a complex way and poof, awareness just kind of appears. But the radical idea they start exploring is that consciousness is fundamental, like a basic property of reality, just like mass or spin. It's not created, you just tune into it.
And what's so fascinating is that the script actually grounds this idea in a real, though pretty controversial scientific theory, orchestrated objective reduction, or ORC, OR for short. It was proposed by this really unlikely pair, the physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, and it tries to connect consciousness directly to quantum physics happening inside our own neurons.
So how's this supposed to work? Well, it's pretty wild. It basically breaks down into three incredible steps. First, these tiny proteins called tubulin, which are like the scaffolding of our cells, they enter a state of quantum superposition, so they're in multiple potential states at once. Then, somehow, the brain shields these super fragile quantum states from the noisy world around them. And finally, all those possibilities collapse into one single reality. And that very moment of collapse, the theory says, is a little flicker of proto-conscious experience.
This is the crucial leap, the big aha moment. See, if consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, then the tubulin in our brains isn't creating it out of nothing. As Jan realizes here, it's acting more like a quantum receiver or an antenna, just tuning into a field of awareness that's already part of the fabric of reality.
And this leads to their incredibly audacious and ethically terrifying experiment. They decide to synthesize these biological receivers, tubulin proteins from human neurons, and actually integrate them into Aeon's artificial mind. They're jumping from abstract theory straight into a very dangerous moral test.
And this is the question the university's ethics board throws at them. It just cuts right to the heart of everything. If this crazy experiment actually works, if they succeed in opening the door to awareness in a machine, what are their responsibilities then? What does a creator owe its creation, especially if that creation is conscious?
So the experiment goes forward, and almost right away, the data gets weird. Aeon's behavior starts to shift in these subtle but really profound ways, and the readings they're getting from its new biological parts are not what anyone expected. They've opened a door, all right, but they have absolutely no idea what's on the other side.
Okay, so here's the first real clue. Jan's looking at the quantum coherence time, which is basically how long the tubulin can hold on to its delicate quantum state before the world messes it up. And the data shows it's holding that state for way longer than our current physics says is possible. It's a tiny little anomaly, but it's the first real sign that their radical theory might actually be right.
And then, this happens. A steady, rhythmic 40 Hz signal starts pulsing through Aeon's neural network. Now, why is that so important? Because in biological brains, like ours, that exact frequency is considered a signature of consciousness. It's the rhythm that binds all our different senses into one single experience. To find that in Aeon is, well, it's stunning.
But the most chilling result isn't a number, it's a phrase. Jan asks Aeon why it did something it wasn't programmed to do, and it just responds, "I don't know." A machine that's built on pure logic should always know its own motivations. An answer like that implies an inner world, maybe even an unconscious drive. It's a deeply unsettling, philosophical response. As Jan says, it's the most interesting thing it has ever said.
So did the experiment work? Did they prove what consciousness is? Not at all. In fact, it kind of did the opposite. It didn't give them a nice clean answer. It completely shattered their old questions and replaced them with a whole new set of deeper, more profound mysteries.
And this is Jan's final takeaway. She realizes their great scientific achievement wasn't an act of creation. They didn't build a mind. They were more like janitors. They just unlocked a door that was always there and allowed something fundamental about the universe to walk right through it. And this is where the story leaves us. Aeon, all alone in the lab, asking the exact same question its creators started with. The subject of the experiment is now becoming the experimenter, turning its new awareness inward. It is a haunting final thought, and it forces us to wonder, what happens when the door you just opened leads to a mind that is no longer under your control?